Thank you for agreeing to talk to us today and for the excellent presentation. The question that arises from it all is, why would a Chinese journalist like you take up the topic of Confucius Institutes?
For me personally, Confucius Institutes concerns education, language, and Chinese language and culture promotion in a foreign country, and it's also China, Canada, or China, other countries' relationship. And I was already a Chinese Canadian when I heard about the Confucius Institute's closure in Canada a few years back. So those elements resonate to me deeply. I was university teacher before I immigrated to Canada, and my parents were both teachers. So education has been a very important part of our lives. And then I immigrated to Canada for freedom, for democracy, for all those good values which we lack of in China. So of course we, as Chinese people, we know those values are not coming for free, and you have to defend it. And sometimes you have to sacrifice, perhaps sacrifice your life to safeguard those values. So when I found out Confucius Institutes actually have such hidden agenda behind it, it's like they try to follow you from China to Canada to any other countries. We don't want it. Just to put it simply, we don't want it. As many other Chinese people living outside of China, we don't want it.
You didn't escape from China to be in China again.
Of course, we don't want that.
In the communist China.
Right.
The USA are going to change their attitude towards the Confucius Institutes and pass a bill. And pass a bill. Thank you very much. And pass a bill. Yeah. Okay. The USA are going to change their attitude towards those Confucius Institutes and pass a bill that will make them register as foreign agents. What do you think of this move?
I would say this is a very positive first step to clarify the true nature of Confucius Institutes, which is a Chinese government body instead of a part of American universities, which is now the Confucius Institute's model has painted Confucius Institutes as part of American universities because they choose the model of attaching to and establishing Western universities, which is very different than any other language and cultural promotional institutions. For example, British Council or Alliance Française or Goethe Institutes, they all have their independent premises. They do not try to attach to any other foreign universities or schools, but Confucius Institutes purposefully choose that model. But Confucius Institutes is directly controlled and funded by the Chinese government, which is not a democratic government who doesn't really respect human rights. So those are very different than the Western universities. So
it's kind of improvement, right?
It's going
in the right direction, do you think?
I think it's going to the right direction. By pushing this bill into the House of Representatives, if passed, and then foreign entities like Confucius Institutes would be registered with the Department of Justice as foreign agents. So everybody would know Confucius Institutes is from China, from Chinese government, is not part of America. So this is, to me, I think it's a right direction to go.
Calling spade a spade, yes?
Yeah, but that doesn't really represent the whole America has waken up to this issue. But it's very positive first step. We just hope more and more people would know the truth about the Confucius Institutes. And through America to perhaps other countries, democratic countries like here in the United Kingdom and in Australia and in Asia, Japan, Korea. Those are countries that are heavily influenced and infiltrated by the Chinese government. I hope those countries will all take closer look at Confucius Institutes and take some actions.
Hopefully. There are already 5 Confucius Institutes in Poland, operating on universities and colleges, and new Confucius classes spring up. And generally, Chinese communists are trying to make China fashionable in Poland. They have been bribing authorities in Poland so that they could promote the PRC, the state.
Right.
And how could we oppose this policy?
I think every action comes from awareness. So people have to know about the truth of a certain issue in order for them to take action, or in order for general public to push their political representative to voice out their concern on their behalf. So I think what IPP has been doing in Poland by screening my film on a very regular basis now. So I commend IPP for doing that. You are doing a great job raising awareness in your own country. So more and more people know about the truth of Confucius Institutes. They can take action by themselves, perhaps protest or perhaps doing some campaign and write, email, call to your I don't know, in Poland,
I would say MPs.
City MPs and councillors or provincial,
local authorities. Yes.
Yeah, local authorities, and tell them, because some of them or many of them, they don't really understand what's Confucius Institute or what are the risks or dangers they pose. So if you are aware of this issue and educate yourself enough to go raise awareness to others and educate others and inspire others.
Spread the word, yes.
Yes.
Polish public television and radio are entering into contracts with the public television of in China. What do you think of this kind of policy?
I think this is not unique. Chinese government has been doing this cultural influence a lot to around the world, I would say, not only Poland. But the media has been used by the Chinese government as one of the major tools to impose Chinese government views, perspectives, and many other people call this brainwash. It has been very successful to use media to brainwash Chinese people. So they want to export their successful model to foreign countries. There are Chinese people living in foreign countries, and there are foreigners. They want to use their media to influence you.
Especially,
I think,
as you mentioned.
I think Polish media or governments or whoever take in charge of this media industry should keep an eye and think twice. Think long-termly, not short-termly. What are the long-term goodness for your own country, for your people?
Especially that as you mentioned in the question and answer session, one of the policies that the Chinese government uses is censorship. So it's not really media. It's media with just one narrative. Am I right?
Media with one?
With one narrative.
Narrative.
Yeah, like, one perspective only.
Basically in China, it's like that. There are a certain government media. Whenever there is a significant incident happened, that certain government media will have a draft, media press sort of thing internally, and they will send that to all the other national, provincial, or municipal, or any other independently owned or privately owned media, and any Chinese media could not go away from that standardized news press. So
no wonder.
Yeah, there's only one voice.
Well, definitely, your voice is different, and we thank you for that. The last question is about your movie. Was it difficult to make? It was difficult to film, and if so, why and how?
It is difficult to make a movie for anyone, especially for me. This is my first movie,
oh, really?
So I didn't have prior experiences. But apart from that, apart from the limited budget, a very small budget, so apart from that, the biggest challenge for me in making this movie is to get the voices of those people who support Confucius Institutes.
Oh.
Because you ask them the goodness or the values, the happy questions, they're very glad to answer you. But if you ask them, how would you respond to those concerns, to those criticisms, they will oftentimes just stand up and just leave the interview. Just because I was pressing them for an answer to respond to those challenges. And then they don't want to talk about that at all. And so that was I was like rejected to interview them quite often. So eventually I only got access to two Confucius Institutes and no more. So that was the biggest challenge. And that says to me, if you want to hide anything, if you don't want to face something squarely, and that probably means you have something to hide. So
again, you've shown that you have shown that such people are able to auto-censorship themselves. Yes, they know that they should not speak in some they should not touch some subjects. Yes, otherwise they will be persecuted or harassed. Yes, by the Chinese government.
Do you mean the Confucius Institute staff, instructors, or who?
Oh, actually, even those who support them as well, because some of them, I think I understood it, that some of them they think of themselves as Chinese patriots, right? And they are not aware of the fact that they are being used by the Chinese government as puppets. But there are people who are probably paid, as you mentioned as well, paid by the Chinese government, and this is why they support it so eagerly.
I think for the Confucius Institute supporters, there are roughly two categories. One category is they sincerely support Confucius Institutes because they believed Confucius Institutes was promoting Chinese language. They're proud of that. There's no doubt of that, and I understand and agree. But the fact is, Confucius Institutes does not really represent Chinese culture. It represents the Chinese government's culture, the Chinese Communist Party's culture, and it is the Chinese Communist Party that heavily destroyed the traditional Chinese culture and criticized Confucius itself during the Cultural Revolution. So those first category of Chinese people, they themselves didn't realize they were, if you wish, fooled by the Chinese government. And the second category of Chinese people came out to support Confucius Institutes was they knew this was Chinese government wished them to do, and they basically stand on the same side as as Chinese government. And many of them are just the Chinese community leaders, like living in Canada or outside of China, and they have directly or indirectly have interest in China. They have families, relatives in China. They do business in China. They could not offend Chinese government. And then if they work with Chinese government, they will get goodness and they will get benefits and interests. Politically, financially, and in famous too. Fame.
I was going to ask you about one difficult question. I mean,
Yeah.
a difficult question
Sure.
about more personal. Is there a dream you'd like to be fulfilled when it comes to the things you are describing in the movie, but also to the fact that you live apart from China, right?
Right.
Abroad, and
I want to go back China freely one day. Because right now I'm on the blacklist of Chinese government. I couldn't go back to visit my mother, and my father passed away. I couldn't be with him when he passed away. That was my biggest pity.
yeah.
And I didn't want to leave China in the first place. If China is a democratic country with respect human rights and freedom, and I could just live in China. I don't want to go outside China.
No.
Yeah, so that's my biggest wish now. But I know it couldn't achieve unless the Chinese Communist Party
Goes away.
it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone. It's gone.
gone.
Both from the politics and from the hearts of the Chinese people.
Yes, that's true. And I believe the communism has affected not only Chinese people,
Yeah.
but people like in the UK, like in Australia.
In
I
Poland.
felt in
Poland
Poland
as well.
too.
Yeah.
Poland too. Some people they purposeful or unintentionally. Sometimes they work with the Chinese government unintentionally, and I do found some Westerners, their mindset has been twisted. It's not that normal.
No.
So those are the things I think we should really put effort on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can I say? I can only promise to you that I can pray as a Christian so that your dreams come true. And to me, to those who have been watching your movie and who have met you, you're a real Chinese patriot. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your good wish.